Good evening, PhinManiacs listeners, and welcome to another episode of the PhinManiacs preview. Brandon Liguori, Matthew Morin. Matthew, let's go back to Halloween Day. The Miami Dolphins hoping to snap a 6-game losing streak against the AFC East leading Buffalo Bills. I don't really understand, why a lot of people thought the Dolphins were going to win that game. I mean, it was competitive early on. You have to give them credit. It was 3-3, and credit Josh Boyer's defense for really keeping Josh Allen in check for really a half. But then you flash forward to the second half, and that's really when Buffalo started taking control. Miami falling 26-11. The bottom line is this team is still looking for their first win since beating Mac Jones. And it's actually really funny because this team is 1-0 against Mac Jones, but 0-7 against any other quarterback not named Mac Jones. But how's everything going, buddy?
No, everything's good. Just to touch on more of the game, Miami they started off nicely. The defense showed up and played well, and they were able to stop the run and play a lot of good zone to rattle Allen and not rattle him, but, kind of get him off his game. And that worked for a half. And then, the offense just couldn't capitalize on the opportunities that they were presented. And that's the story of this team. One side of the ball plays well. The other side can't capitalize, and they just can't put it together. So I feel like this team is just struggling to find an identity, struggling to find some consistency and something that they can build on. Because whenever they have any semblance of that, it just gets destroyed by the other side of the ball. So other than that, I'm okay. I'm good. As a fan,
that was a lot. That was a lot. That was a lot. But so then get this. So then the rumors are: is Deshaun Watson going to be the Dolphins' next quarterback? Is Deshaun Watson possibly going to be the next Dan Marino? And then here we come. Here comes Tuesday, the NFL's trading deadline period, which all trades had to be submitted to the league office by 4 p.m. Eastern time. And then Ian Rappaport and Adam Schefter, two well-known journalists, they both say that the Dolphins are not going to get a deal done for Deshaun Watson simply because his legal issues have not been resolved yet. When you're someone like Tua, Matt, what really goes on inside of your head? Because they were honestly picking his brain for the last 2 months or so, saying that maybe Tua was going to be done after this season, really not even able to finish this season because Deshaun Watson was going to come next.
Okay. I've got a lot of angles that I could take here, and just if you just do me the favor and let me go a little bit.
No, yeah, of course.
I think here's the thing. Tua, you could clearly see in the press conferences and every media obligation that he does, he is clearly frustrated by the whole situation, and his body language, you know what they say, like the body language speaks way more than words ever will. And he's going to give every right answer. He's going to be a professional. He's going to, be Tua. But you could clearly see that he's sick and tired of that same question just asked in different ways. It's basically just, do you care that they keep talking about this? Do you care that people are basically saying, fans of your own team, opposing fans, credited journalists, they're all saying, well, Tua's not this, Tua's not that. Deshaun can go fix it all. And they're just waiting for Tua to mess up and just further that narrative. So you could clearly see that he is just not a fan. And I feel like that this was not handled correctly by the Dolphins. And I'm a Dolphins fan. And I will not hesitate to say that they handled this from a PR standpoint and from treating your franchise player, your fifth overall pick, your franchise quarterback. Whenever you draft someone that high, that's a quarterback, that's your guy, right?
Your hope to be fair.
You cannot treat him that way. You cannot go, and Chris Greer as the general manager cannot he just can't not do press conferences for an extended period of time when the rumors about his team negotiating with other teams for a high profile player are at their highest. He cannot do that and just expect Tua to just, everything's fine. It doesn't work like that. And Tua will eventually, I hope this doesn't happen, but that's grounds for him to later on be like, well, I wasn't treated that well. And when that contract comes up, he could very easily have a real case to say, hey, I don't feel like I'm wanted. I want to be traded. And there's nothing
to say. Of course. Nothing. And, I'm actually, I'm glad you were able to mention, him possibly not being wanted, because I believe a beat writer for the team asked him that question. And I think Tua's response to that reporter's question was, I don't not feel wanted. So, I mean, he may seem like he is wanted by the team, but walking into this upcoming Sunday against Houston Texans, I mean, is Deshaun Watson even really going to be there? Is he going to be on the sidelines? I really do not know. But how awkward really is that for a guy like Stephen Ross, for a guy like Chris Greer, and really for even Tua himself, because they're possibly going to be staring down on the other sideline the guy that was possibly going to be replacing you. I mean, how ironic could that situation be?
Well, you know, and you got to remember, Stephen Ross is, correct me if I'm wrong, he's 81 years old. He's owned this team for an extended period of time, and he wants to win.
Correct.
And he feels like he has the ammo to get a deal like that done. There's reports saying that he signed off on it and he was ready to go. And that's not surprising coming from a guy like that. And, you know, he's got a lot of money and he's older and he wants to win something. He wants something to show for owning a team. You know, all he's got to show for owning the Dolphins now is just a bunch of disappointing seasons and, you know, a bunch of contracts that were way too big. And Ndamukong Suh, I could go on and on and on. That's a whole different conversation, but that's all he's got to show for it. So a big splash with Deshaun, I'm sure would have steered him in the right direction, but it obviously didn't make sense from a legal standpoint. Nobody knows what's going to happen with Deshaun.
Correct.
Nobody knows if he's going to play in 2022 or 2023.
Or really no one, I mean, Matt, really no one ever knows if he's going to ever take another meaningful NFL snap too, you know? Right. So I want to take you right now. So we have a question coming in from Cap for Life. It says, guys, give your thoughts on what Greg Cosell said about Tua. This man is the all-22. So apparently Greg Cosell is NFL Films, and he says that Tua is a one-read quarterback, meaning that he just looks at his first read, and if it's there, he's going to throw it, and if it's not there, he's still going to force it, and whatever happens, happens. So give me your thoughts on what Cosell said, and really, Matt, if you think that Tua is just a one-read type quarterback.
I'm not going to agree or disagree. I'm going to take the safe route here. I will say that back in college and his days at Alabama, Tua was very used to his first read having a lot of separation. So whether that would be Waddle, Ruggs, Devontae Smith, a lot of those guys were wide open on his first read. So it was easy for him to use that accuracy that he has and just drill the ball downfield. And this is more about a quote from his quarterbacks coach at Bama. I forget his name, but he alluded to there's some quarterbacks that can hit a door from 50 yards away. Some can even hit the doorknob. Tua can hit the keyhole. And that's him talking about his accuracy. So when you're in a situation like that at Bama and Devontae's got 5 yards of separation, Waddle's got 5 yards of separation, and Ruggs has 5 yards of separation, it's easy to hit those guys in stride. Now, when you get to the NFL and you've got less than 3 seconds to throw the ball, more closer to 1 second, your guys aren't getting separation, then you start to not look like the quarterback that you look like at Alabama. And I feel like that's something that Tua needs to adjust to, and he hasn't done the best job with that, but you have to consider the circumstances with what he has to work with. Yes, we went and sought out speed for him, but it doesn't mean anything if you don't actually protect him up front. And that's where I feel like this front office has failed. So I don't think he's a one-read quarterback. I feel like he's clearly capable of deciphering a defense and reading through and moving linebackers and safeties with his eyes and making the right throw. He's clearly capable of that. We've seen that on multiple occasions in college and in the NFL. So I don't agree, but I don't disagree. So I mean, what do you think? I'll leave it to you.
Tua, I don't really think Tua is a one-read type quarterback. I honestly think everyone kind of jumps to conclusions too soon about Tua. I mean, just let the kid play ball. I mean, really, if his first read is there, he'll get it. But I've seen plenty of times where his first read has not been there, and you see him roll out of the pocket, and you see him try to find Devontae Parker, who even saying Devontae Parker's name just kind of really frustrates me right now because, as we know earlier I want to say, 3-4 hours ago, the Dolphins did place him on IR, meaning that he'll miss a minimum of 3 games. He was dealing with a hamstring injury. He's been out. Well, he did play this past Sunday against Buffalo. He missed the previous game. It's just been a frustrating situation for Parker because this is a player who's a first-round pick coming out of Louisville in 2015, so we know the talent is there.
Right.
However, whether it was Joe Philbin or whether it was Adam Gase and now Brian Flores, it just seems like Parker can't stay healthy on a consistent season-to-season basis. And I think losing receivers like that, who really, the talent's all there, and you always talk about being a potential playoff team. When you don't have guys out there who can prove themselves like that, it becomes very frustrating. And really, it becomes frustrating on Tua because he loves hooking up with Parker. I mean, you looked at those stats from this past Sunday at Buffalo. I think Parker led all Miami receivers in total yards. And we can even really talk about Will Fuller. I mean, here's a guy coming off from free agency, coming off a major injury. He comes to the Dolphins, hopes for a fresh start. He breaks a finger. Okay, the Dolphins place him on IR. Well, you think IR, you're only missing a minimum of 3 games, but I think this is like the 5th or 6th game now that Fuller's about to miss. Unless he's a surprise active this upcoming Sunday, which we'll get into more about, speaking of that Week 9 preview, Matt. Right. I mean, really, what – I mean, I mean, at the end of the day, Deshaun Watson's not here. So this is a chance for Tua to now prove himself. You got 9 games left. Chances are playoffs are out of the equation right now. I don't think the team, even if they win out, it would be very difficult to make the playoffs because they will be losing a lot of the tie-breaking scenarios, especially losing against Buffalo twice. You still have 2 games against the New York Jets. But I just think with that tough competition with Tennessee and Baltimore and Pittsburgh, I just think that there's too many teams in the AFC that are ahead of Miami. But, Matt, right? I mean, when you take a look at this Week 9 preview, you have 2 teams that are coming into this football game 1-7. So really, it's really all hell's loose. I mean, there's really nothing to lose for here unless you're a guy like Tua who's potentially playing for a job here next year, no?
Well, you look at these 2 teams and it's just 2 very, not to mince words here, they're 2 bad football teams in the NFL. They're giving up the same amount of yards. It's not a good stat. They're just very underwhelming offensively and defensively. They're not good football teams. They're not very well-rounded. You could probably say they're not well coached. Houston's coach is going to get more of, some leniency because he hasn't been there that long, but Flores, week by week, it's just getting worse for him. So, yeah, I mean, Tua has to look at this as, okay, I'm past the hurdle of the potential of Watson, replacing me. Mm-hmm. Now I can play with nothing on my shoulders. He's got 9 games to really put together a body of work that us as fans could look at. Okay, this is something that we want to work with. Not just the fans, not even really about the fans. It's more about, the front office. You got to prove, okay, let's build around Tua. It doesn't seem like that would be a waste of time. He has to go out there and prove that. And there's a couple of ways he can do that. He needs to find a way past this just horrible unit of an offensive line. He has to find a way to get past that, throw the ball downfield, and hopefully someone's open. I think he needs to take his chances. And if he wants to create a legacy in Miami and be a Dolphin for the rest of his career, he's going to have to find a way to bring back some of that magic that he was used to creating at Bama and just be himself. That's really all he can do. That's all he can control.
And you take a look at these final 9 games remaining for Brian Flores' Dolphins. 2 of them will come on prime time. This upcoming Thursday night against the Baltimore Ravens at home, and you still have a Monday night date against the New Orleans Saints, who won't be without Jameis Winston. I mean, I think really those 2 primetime games, it's going to be an opportunity for not us only to see what Tua can do, but really the entire world to see, is he the Dolphins' future? Because I can tell you right now, if he doesn't perform well in these final 9 games, Miami might have to upgrade the quarterback spot come this upcoming April for the 2022 NFL draft. And whatever they do in that first round, or really whatever they do before, they're going to have to make moves, because I think, honestly, these final 9 games are probably Tua's last chance to say whether he's going to be the next Dan Marino. I mean, look at Ryan Tannehill. Wasn't that successful with the Dolphins, moves away, goes to Tennessee, and he basically revamped his entire career. He's become a top 10 quarterback in this league. And I believe Tennessee right now is sitting comfortably in first place in the AFC South at 6-2. So whose fault is it really to blame for this 1-7 start, Matt?
Well, you got to put it mostly on Flores. I think the whole coaching staff was in over its head completely, and I think they're proving week by week that they were not prepared for this season, despite injuries and despite things that they can't control. The team just doesn't look very disciplined. They don't look very invested. They don't look very. They don't look like they want to give themselves for this staff. You watch teams on Sunday and on Saturday too in college, you could tell which team is putting it all out there for their coaches. And the Dolphins don't look like one of those teams. That's just, it doesn't take a scientist to analyze that and see that. I would put it on Flores mostly, and you got to put some of it on Greer for constructing the team. I think he didn't have enough of an understanding of what was needed on this team for it to compete for the playoffs and further themselves after last year. I think I'm very happy with Jalen Waddle. I would not change the pick for the world, but at the end of the day, it's pretty evident that they needed the help on the offensive line, and trading away a sixth and moving up to get Waddle. Yes, he's very talented, but it doesn't mean anything if he's only used as a screen merchant, basically. Sorry to, use that phrase. It's probably insulting to Waddle, but it's not. That's the coordinators. They're using him in the wrong way. So the pick is not very good, and you're not going to use him the right way. Then what's the
point? Well, I mean, I will say this. It will be interesting to see how the Dolphins utilize Waddle, and it'll be interesting really to see this upcoming Sunday how Tua plays in his first game since knowing that he will be under-centered for the Miami Dolphins, and we won't have to hear the bat chatter of, is Deshaun Watson going to be here next? So good news for the Houston Texans, probably bad news for the Dolphins, is that Tyrod Taylor will be back for the first time since week 2 in Cleveland. The Dolphins have had some trouble with, mobile quarterbacks in general, and Taylor is one of those quarterbacks. He can create plays with his legs. He can create plays with his arm. And looking up stats this morning, I found that Tyrod Taylor has 10 touchdowns and no picks in his career versus the Dolphins. Most of those touchdowns probably came when he was a member of the Buffalo Bills. But what are the Dolphins going to have to do to breathe a sigh of relief, knowing that there's a chance, there's a slim chance that the Dolphins do have a shot at breaking this 7-game losing streak, Matt?
Well, I think Jalen Phillips is up. He's got to show his athleticism, and Andrew Van Ginkel, he's been underwhelming. We chose that guy over keeping Van Noy, and he hasn't shown anything for it. So those two guys are going to have to do a great job of keeping Tyrod Taylor in the pocket. Tyrod's a very talented dude. He can get out of the pocket. He can escape. He can create with his legs, and not only get downfield with his legs, he can create different throwing angles, and he's a good quarterback. But we're gonna have to keep him in the pocket. You got to keep him contained. It's easier said than done, but that's got to be the emphasis from those two. I think those two will either basically make or break that scenario, in my opinion.
And, really what also struck me too, Matt, is for the second time in 3 seasons, the Dolphins are 1-7 after 8 weeks of football under Brian Flores. You flash back to Flores' first season, the Dolphins were 0-7 before picking up their first win. Now here come the Dolphins at 1-7. If they lose Sunday, this is going to be the longest losing streak under Brian Flores. And if you're a guy like him, I don't know does that make you – I mean, if that puts you on the hot seat, if you lose to Houston – then you lose to Baltimore, you're looking at a 1-9 start going on the road against the New York Jets, who really seem to not figure out that quarterback situation, with Mike White going down last night against the Indianapolis Colts in that 15-point defeat.
Right.
There's just no way that this team can lose Sunday. I mean, whether this is a playoff team or not, and clearly this is not a playoff team right now, you have to win Sunday. I mean, I honestly think even tie-in with this team, and let's say it's 17-17 after 4 quarters of play and the 10-minute overtime period, I still don't think I think that's an absolute disaster. To tie to a team like that who, they knew coming in this was going to be a rebuilding year with no Deshaun Watson, with no DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, Matt, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think this is a must-win football game for Brian Flores, no ifs, ands, or buts?
Well, it would definitely help. If he loses, it's only going to hurt. I think it's really just comes down to that for Flores. It's either you win or you don't. And that if you don't, it just increases what everybody is already talking about. So it's not just a local thing. This is a national thing. People are looking at the Dolphins and saying, well, they built so much momentum and they had so much going for them last season, even though Tua didn't have all the flashy stats and do all of that, they still look like they were on the upward. And then they come out this year and they They win their first game, and then they just fall off a cliff, and they're 1-7. So what does that tell you about Brian Flores? It tells you that this is not the first time he's had a streak like this. This is the second time, and it's way less excusable now because he's in his third year of his tenure. This happened in his first year. He didn't have much to do with that. I think he prepared his team as well as he could, given the circumstances. But now he's got his own team. He's been here for a while, and now you have a streak like this. It just doesn't look good. I think he needs to win this game to, I'm not going to say save his job, but he needs to win this game to not flip it, but kind of work back towards good momentum. Losing is only going to make it worse. That's a given.
And knowing that you're going to be on a short week playing against a very talented Baltimore Ravens squad, which we know that they've had Brian Flores' number since he got the job, and we know that team overall has just had the Dolphins' number. You feel like for the last 8-9 years plus,
right?
And I also want to give just a quick shout out to Drew Geyer. He was able to jump on our podcast last week. Great guy. We were all three of us were able to correctly and precisely break down Miami's Week 8 preview against the Buffalo Bills, and he would have won that bet. I believe he had told me that as long as if the Dolphins were able to cover the 6 points, which you and I were – we were winning that early on.
We were.
We saw that third and fourth quarter just – it's funny. He hasn't texted me since. So I don't know if there's no reason for him to be in hiding mode. His team is sitting comfortably in the AFC East. But, Matt, before I let you run, what are your weekend plans? What is your tomorrow? I know the Miami Hurricanes have a home game against Georgia Tech. And, hey, Manny Diaz is still the head coach, so they did have a nice win, though, against Pitt, even though I did hear there were some potential scandals about play calling or coaching, or they were using too many headphones. Or
what are you talking about? No. Miami cheating? Never, ever. No. Well, they don't cheat good enough because we're not Bama and we're not Clemson. So, I'm going to watch the UM game. I'm going to watch the Dolphins game. The Heat are, even though they lost the other night to Boston, they're on the upward. The Panthers are very hot. They're a good team.
9-0-1 Florida Panthers. Man,
it's unfortunate that Q isn't there, but I think they're finding a way to stay the course.
I always thought, not to really go off track, but I always thought the Panthers were going to be a Stanley Cup team, and if there's a chance for them to be that, it's got to be this year. Especially with everything going on around Joe Quenneville, you knew he had to leave after hearing what had transpired when he was with the Chicago Blackhawks. Right. But knowing that even with the coaching change and the players and really the front office, everybody was still able to stick together and fight, because that's really major adversity to deal through something like that, and still able. They were able to scratch out an overtime win last night, and tomorrow night's game against the Carolina Hurricanes is going to be huge because Carolina's coming into that game 9-0, and I want to definitely have both of us jump on a hockey podcast soon because it is fun to talk about. They've been probably hot in hockey.
You look at the Panthers, right? Not to. This is a Dolphins podcast.
No, yeah,
talk sport. It's okay. How many times have you seen that story in sports? That teams go through adversity early in the season. They're very talented, but they go through adversity, and everyone kind of is like, "Oh, I don't know how the season outlook is now." And they end up winning a championship. Go look at the Braves. They won this week.
Yep.
They were below 500 at the All-Star break.
And missing Ronald Acuna. The torn ACL happened against the Marlins at Lone Depot. So
I remember that. And I didn't even know that the Braves had enough firepower to win a World Series. But immediately I thought, there goes their, hopes and dreams. For sure, that's their best player done. And it's all about who's hot at the time. And the Braves were on a roll, and they got it done. So that happens in sports all the time. I would love to see the Panthers win a Stanley Cup. That would be amazing.
Hey, we know the Dolphins it's going to be another year without a potential playoff run and a Super Bowl run for the Miami Dolphins. But we can hope it for the Florida Panthers and the Miami Heat. Matthew Morin, as always, thank you for your time. It's always fun to chat on a Friday night. For Brandon Liguori, Matthew Morin, this has been the PhinManiacs preview. And, Matt, let's hope the Dolphins finally break that miserable 7-game losing streak.
Yes.
Fingers crossed. Fins up, everyone, and enjoy your football weekend. Thank you, guys.
Fins up.